Now we're going to move on into chapter 4, which talks about data sheets and data tables. The difference between a data sheet or a range and a table. That's the big topic here, understanding the difference between these. And so we're going to start first talking about an Excel range feature, the range, basic range of information. And then we're going to go through a couple concepts. And then we're going to talk about tables. And that's the primary goal of this, is to talk about those two topics. You go to your Excel, open, browse, and there's a file there called filter. Now, filter is just a data sheet or some data information. So this is some kind of cell sheet that has some departments and stats. We've looked at this before. That's all it is. Okay, now this is a range. This is considered a range of data. A range is something we normally work with. So if you click on the range anywhere in the middle here, it doesn't matter where it is. You click like on any field on the department here. Go to your data tab, and you can sort it. So when you click on this AZZA, you don't have to select the entire area. If you watch it really carefully, it kind of selects it, and then it deselects it really fast. So you just have to click anywhere in the field, and things aren't getting misaligned either. So it's selecting the entire thing, sorting, keeping everything together. So you can click on this AZ button to kind of quickly sort it in this manner. If you want to sort it by multiple fields, that's where you click on the little sort button right next to it. And this time I'm going to sort it by department. I'm going to add a level. And I'm going to sort it by maybe last name, add a level, and I'm going to sort it by first name. Now, if you don't have these labels here, it's because you don't have this checked. So if this is not checked, it actually puts in the column name. And the problem with that, this title is going to get sorted with the information. So you got to make sure you click on that little checkbox. If it's not checked, sometimes it checks it, and sometimes it misses it. And that's essentially what you want to do, is you say okay to that, and it's going to sort it by that field. And then you can simply click sort and do it by another group of fields. And so that's essentially the sorting capability. Now the one next to it, you click in the middle of the data range somewhere, and you click on the little filter button. And most people first sort of figure this out. They've seen other people do it. And you can do some sorting this way too. I can sort it by different fields. You can actually reduce or eliminate the amount of information you want to be display available. So in this case, you just click admin or department and say okay, and it filters it down to that level. Now, oftentimes you might have multiple sorts out here, multiple filters. I might want to filter it by maybe these here. So now I've got it filtered by two different fields. And the problem with this is now I have to go back and clear these out. So a lot of times people would click on this button and click on the clear button right there. There's a better way to do it. If you come up to the filter ribbon, right next to it, there's a button here called clear. And that will clear all filters. So if you have a very large database and you have a lot of filters out there, you can clear them out and it clears everything out. Now a good example of that is if you come over to the next tab called large database, I might sort it by different fields. For example, I might come out here and sort it by country. You click on that, choose your filter button, and I'm going to filter it by country. Maybe I'll choose just USA or something like that. And I might filter by some other fields too. I might come over and filter it by contact, like this. And so you might filter 2 or 3 fields, as you can see, but you may not remember all the filters that you've applied because the database is so large. So in that case, that's when I clear it up here because it clears everything out completely. And that's how you want to clear that out. So that's what I'm just showing you with a larger database. It might miss some filter that's been applied. Let's turn off our filter. There's another feature called Advanced Filter. So for the Advanced Filter, let's go through and select these first two values on 5 and 6, copy it, and paste it up to A1. So all I did is I copied the label and these names so I can get rid of these. So I might choose administration greater than, I'm looking for any status greater than 2, any salary that's greater than 20,000. So you can actually specify your criteria in a different field like this. This is called the advanced filter. Now the advantage of this doesn't tell me what criteria I use to actually search it. So therefore, that's why you can use this advanced filter. So make sure you have this field up on top, the labels on top, and then some criteria in the air values there. Then you choose your advanced filter. So it looks like the list range is correct. It grabbed the list range. The criteria range is actually going to be that stuff that I copied. And then if you say OK to that, it will filter it based on that criteria. Now, if I change that criteria, if I change this one to be, maybe I'll just put 3 in here like this. So now I have to go through and apply my advanced filter back to it and say, OK, only filter the 3. But the advantage of this technique is that you can see the criteria right up in here. Now, what if you put in the word, I'm going to clear the filter out, put in the word development, and I'll leave the rest blank. This is an OR operation. So this is an AND operation. All these have to be true. Doing it this way is an OR operation. So that means you're looking at all of this stuff or all of this stuff. And so when you put them in a third level like that, you can put it that way. Now if I come over to my advanced filter again, looks like I have to change my list range. And then I also have to change my criteria range because I now have a new field in my criteria. So I have another column there. So again, some people like using this because they can see the results. If they were to print this out for somebody, it's not clear what fields they were actually applying to the criteria. So that should give me both all of the development people and just the administration people that fit that criteria. And so that's just a little bit about a range. Go ahead and clear it out again. Now what I want to do is we're going to look at another function here called the subtotal range. So I'm going to create a subtotal here. I'm going to base it on department. So make sure you have it sorted by department. My administrations, my developments are together, my production is together, and my sales are together. Make sure you have it sorted by department first. And then we're going to click on this button here called Subtotal. So it says we want to create a subtotal based on department, but we want to have a subtotal of sum it up based on salary. So this is going to create a subtotal for each department to give you the total of the salary for that department. And so again, you want to make sure you put the department at each department, the function sum, and choose the salary. And that actually creates these subtotals. Now, that's great, but let me tell you how I use this too. Is that a lot of times if you want to see the subtotals only, over on the left side, there's these little numbers on top. If you click on the number 2, that will collapse it down to the second level. And so that actually the summary of each group and the grand total. If you click on the 1, that will bring it all the way down to the grand total. Click on 3, that will expand it all. Or I can simply collapse it all and expand one piece at a time. So I can expand one, I click on that little plus or negative sign to expand or collapse it. And that's essentially what the subtotal will be used for. Now I use this for a lot of things. I use it for taxes, for one example, is that when I'm all done with my taxes, I put them in categories, travel, supplies, on and on and on. And then I just simply create a subtotal. Then I have like a one-pager that gives me my subtotals for all the categories. And I can use that and plug those numbers right into my taxes. So that's one thing I use it for quite a bit. But I think it also provides a little bit more intelligence on your database. Now, the problem with I have right now is that it's great, but I don't have my data back the way it was. So I can't sort it. I can't do various things like that. So here's the second most important part. If I come over to my subtotal again, I can remove the summarized information as easily as I created it. So if I hit the word remove all, it removes it back to its normal layout. And then if I want to move things around or copy some things and that kind of stuff, I can do that. And when I'm done, I can simply go through and create another subtotal. And remember the previous information, I create my subtotal again. So you can create a subtotal really easily using this feature. This grouping feature over here is also very helpful. So let's jump over to our large database and show you some of this grouping features. So here I have my contact first name, my contact last name, contact title, and position. I'm going to highlight E, F, and G, and right above the subtotal is this button here called Group. And I can group that into a group and collapse that group. Come back a little further over to the address information. I'm going to select J, K, L, M, N and group that together. And so for a large database, this grouping feature is pretty useful to use to get more of a handle on your data. So when I click on these little plus signs, now the reason why I didn't collapse the contact first name is I wanted something to see here. I didn't collapse the address because I wanted to see the initial address, and this little plus sign is based on the address. So that is a sidebar concept of related to for the subtotal, because the subtotal is very nice to have, and it creates these outlines automatically for you, but you can use the outlines independent of the subtotal. And so that's that. So that kind of takes care of the subtotal feature. We talked a little bit about the grouping features, talked about the filters, the sorting, and advanced sorting. So that's what we talked about here. Sorting, here's all the concepts we talked about. Here's some advanced filters that you can see. Here's your clear filter. Here's some subtotal features. Now we're going to talk about what a table is. Let's come back to the data sheet that we're working with. Let's remove our subtotal. So we're going to say remove all. Back to this level. And now we're going to convert this to a table. Now, the two things I want to get across is that a table is not a range. A table is a different structure than a range. And understand the difference between these is the key point. We now know what a range is, or a data sheet. We just talked about that. Now we're going to convert this to a table, and then we'll talk about why you would want to do this. So we go to Insert. Make sure you have no subtotals now. And there's a little option called Table. Click on that. Make sure you're inside the table when you click that. It's going to give you a range, selection range. Say OK. And now we just created a table. Now, some of the advantages of using a table, up in the ribbon up here, you have styles. You also have these little double arrow underneath the styles, which is a gallery. And so you have a lot of different styles you could use to format this in different ways. Another style. So that's one of the advantages, that you have these automatically formatted capabilities to actually format the table. Now you also have this ability right here, these little buttons here, you can turn off certain things. So there's my banded rows. I can turn that off if I didn't want that. Maybe I want to turn on banded columns instead of rows. So maybe I have a lot of data and I felt that it'd be better to have banded columns than banded rows. You can also highlight a header row or turn off the header row. You can also create what's called a subtotal at the bottom of the sheet. And these are just some of the things that can be done in this design tab that pops up. Now, the minute you click out of the design table itself, you're back into Excel and the ribbon disappears. So in this particular field, you have your table design. Let's look at some of these other options in here. Well, one of them is you can refresh it if you have it connected to a data source. You can insert a slicer. Let's put a slicer in. So let's do a department slicer. So this is more of a modern filter technique or a quick filter. Yeah, you can click these drop-down arrows to filter it in this manner, or you can simply click on this slicer tool to select specific fields. Using your Control and Select key, you can select one field or multiple fields. When you're done with the slicer, you can click on this little clear corner there, and it clears it out. So this is a little quicker way to do filtering if you want. Now, to get rid of this department filter, a lot of times people think, well, I need to come over here, click on my insert filter, and it doesn't let you turn it on or off. So you just have to simply delete it. So you simply highlight on the filter, hit the delete key on the keyboard. So that's essentially what it is. Now you also put these values up here when you create a table. Let's go back to the table design, and that's how it works. Now, some of the advantages of using the table is this. If I come to the bottom down here and I add another record at the very bottom here, I'll type in Hutch, Jeff, and I'll put in, I'll just slide these dates down a little bit, or 1/7/2004, put in cells. So you know what's happening here is I'm actually expanding the table. The table is growing. If I come over to the side here and call this new salary, new sal like this, and I create a formula that's going to multiply my salary times 2. I say equals salary times 2. If I just multiply the salary times 2, it expands the table and includes that value. If I do it out here, that wouldn't be the case, but if I did it right next to it, it expands the table. This is one of the major advantages of this feature. So when I use this table as input into a chart or a pivot table, and I expand the values out here, anyway, so that's the idea of that. So this adding things to the table is what I was referring to. That's one of the major advantages of doing this. And you notice here when I press my equal sign and I clicked on the salary times 2, it automatically filled it down completely because it knows where that stuff belongs. See? So essentially that is what advantage. So we use tables as input into pivot tables charts. That way when you're finished and you add more data, all you have to do is do a refresh and it pulls that data into the pivot table chart. And when you do a lot of imports, import from a database of some sort, it automatically creates a table. So tables, you'll see tables get created for different points, different times, but the idea of that is understand what a table is. Now, one thing you can do with a table is I've had people come to me before and say, well, how do I create banded rows? Well, it's a little tedious in Excel, but I know you can create a table. and get banded rows. But you may not want it to be in a table layout. Go to your table design. There's another option called convert to a range. So you can actually convert it back to a range, and it will maintain the format. So if I have the word convert to range, yes, I want to convert it to a range. Now it's back to a range. But it kind of looks like a table. But how do I know it's not a table? Is there's no design tab at the top. So although it looks like a table, it's really not a table. And so the table is an actual physical structure to provide input into some other device. You've all seen tables before, correct? Some of you have, some of you haven't?
Yeah, yes, I have.
So you just got to know how to manipulate them. And if you don't want the table, you can always convert it back out of a table. I've seen people cut and paste information from one sheet to another. They just want to get it out of this table layout. And they don't realize all you have to do is convert it, and it will convert right out. So just understanding that sometimes when you get tables, you may or may not want them, and you have to know how to manipulate them at that point. That's really all there is with tables. When you convert it back to a table, I can take this information now and go to insert and convert it back to a table. Now I'm back into a table mode. So that is essentially what a table is all about. But it's important to know the difference because a table doesn't work like a normal range. Matter of fact, if I create this total row up here, look at this formula down at the bottom here. It's not your normal Excel formula. So the idea of that is that if you want to use some Excel formulas, you might not be able to do it in a table layout. You've got to use the Excel range. And so that's one reason why you might not want to have it as a table, so that because the formulas are different than in Excel. Some of the formulas still work, some don't. That's the one big difference, I think, in a table and a range. So I'm going to convert it back to a range with my table design. Looks like I can convert it to a range. Looks like I can export it out. I can also refresh it if I wanted to. Looks like I can actually create a pivot table from this table. These are just some of the things we can do. I'm going to convert it back to a range, and now back to a range. All right, that's pretty much all there is, but I want to make sure that we understood the difference between our tables. We talked about the table options. I went through all the options in the document, describing some of those options.